Welcome to our channel Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
A love triangle can tear people apart, especially if it involves you, your husband to be, and your mother. Yeah, I know. Sad and complicated, isn't it? But let me tell you my story. I am Linda. I am 21 years old. I was a ballerina, and I loved acting on stages and theaters. I enjoyed all kinds of arts. They called me the butterfly because I was always supporting my colleagues and giving them positive energy. I didn't care much about love stories because I felt that none of the boys I'd ever met ever rose to the level of hero in my assessment. That is, until I met Ethan. He was an angel, handsome, educated, and a true artist. He could play music, draw, and direct movies. He was adored by all the girls on our drama team. And when he was assigned to direct our play, I ended up adoring him too. I liked everything about him: his voice, his speech, his manner, his style, and that lovely smile of his. One day, I decided to tell him about my love for him. He was working in the theater, and I asked him if he could excuse himself for 5 minutes so I could speak with him in private. He accepted, and once we were alone, I confessed to him, "Ethan, I think I love you." He was mildly surprised and pleased, it seemed, and he asked me to repeat my words again. I did, and he suddenly swept me into his arms and embraced me and said, "You are the answer to all my dreams, Linda. I have loved you from the first day I laid eyes on you." We began spending a lot of time together. One day, he told me that he wanted to meet my mother. I asked him why, and he said that by tradition, he needed to get my mother's permission to marry me. I was ecstatic and felt as if I were floating in the air. I rushed home breathless to tell Mom, who was not only my mother, but my best friend as well. When she saw me, she said, "So, someone wants to marry you, huh?" she said. Amazed, I asked her, "How did you know?" She replied, "I can tell by that euphoric look on your face and your rosy cheeks." Then she smiled lovingly. I invited Ethan to come by my home tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and I began counting down the hours till his arrival. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang, and when I opened the door briskly, he was standing there holding a bouquet of flowers. He handed the flowers to me, and I invited him to come in and sit in the sitting room. I went to Mom's room to hurry her up. Then I returned to sit with Ethan. Mom appeared at the door saying, "Hello, Ethan. Please forgive me for not greeting you at the door." I looked at Ethan. His eyes were transfixed on Mom's face. From that point, he never took his eyes off Mom for the rest of the evening. Even worse than that, whenever he would speak to her, he would just ignore me completely, as if I weren't in the same room as they were. And his looks weren't simply looks of admiration. No, they seemed to be deeper than that. I was both stunned and hurt. I had to struggle to suppress my rolling thoughts. When he finally had to leave and excused himself, he ended up not even saying a word about our marriage. Instead, he just promised Mom that he would visit her again sometime. "Ethan is so cute," Mom said after he left. Peeved, I asked, "Is he just cute, or did you like him a lot?" "I like him a lot because he will be your future husband," she replied, looking at me strangely. I was so jealous of my mom. Do you believe it? I went to my room and found a message from Ethan. "I enjoyed my visit immensely. I simply adore your mom. She is so elegant." I stabbed at my phone's touchscreen and messaged back, "Well, what about me? Am I elegant too?" He replied defensively, "Yes, of course, you are always beautiful. That goes without saying. I love you." Ethan spent the next few days constantly talking about my mom. He even asked me for her phone number. The nerve of this guy! I suddenly saw my love life crashing in flames and became so jealous of my mother that I avoid speaking to her altogether. Ethan was now speaking with her more than me. I began to argue with him over silly, trivial things. He asked me what was wrong, but I didn't answer him. I just gave him the cold shoulder treatment. One day, Mom and I were watching a movie at home, and I couldn't help but notice that she was receiving a text message every minute or so. She casually but subtly held her cell phone at just such an angle that I couldn't inadvertently read the text messages from my vantage point. Ooh, how I hated my mother at that moment. Suddenly the doorbell rang. She put down her cell phone to go answer the door. In that instant, I snatched it up and began ravenously scanning her message thread. From Ethan, "Your face is etched in my heart." I immediately took a screenshot and forwarded it to my phone. When Mom returned from answering the door, I showed her the message from Ethan that I had read and demanded an explanation. She seemed confused, then enlightened, and said, "Oh, okay, I can explain. Just calm down." I shouted angrily, "Explain what? That you two are lovers and I am a blind fool?" She replied in a sage, calm voice, "There is a misunderstanding here, and if you will calm down for just a minute, I can explain everything." Suddenly, I heard Ethan's voice behind me. He proudly held out a necklace to show me. It had Mom's picture in it. I was incensed, outraged. I said, "You have the gall to show me this necklace with my mom's picture in it? My God!" Confused and taken aback at my sudden outburst of animosity, he cautiously offered in clarification. No, she isn't your mom. She's mine. Look again." Stumped, I looked at the photo more closely. He was right. The woman in the necklace wasn't Mom. When I first looked at her, I mistook her for Mom. The resemblance was uncanny. He explained gently, "When I first met your mom, I was overjoyed. I felt that destiny had granted me not only a new wife, but a second mother as well. When I called your mom the first time, I told her that she looked just like my mother, and I asked her to please consider me as her son, too." I was shocked, speechless. Mom and Ethan were both crying tears of joy. "I am so sorry for my jealous behavior. Please forgive me for my stupidity," I said in a deeply apologetic voice. "Today is my wedding day, and I'm very pleased and proud to tell all my readers out there that my mom loves my husband and he her." And isn't that just the sweetest thing?
One nice thing about success is seeing all your friends and family being so proud of you and your accomplishments. This mutual respect and appreciation is what real friendship is all about. My story is about success and friendship, and also when two friends become incompatible and no longer go hand in hand. My name is Sherry, and I'm 21 years old. I had a friend named Margot. She wasn't just my friend, she was my best friend, my sister. She meant the world to me. We were alike in so many ways, even in our hobbies, our dreams. After my dad's death, Mom and I moved to Margot's neighborhood, since her mom was my mom's best friend. I was only 3 years old at the time, so Margot and I practically grew up together. At school, we shared the same classes, studied together, and even partnered as lab partners. She and I both aspired to become pharmacists. I struggled through high school, but made it through with Margot's support and encouragement. I didn't have as much freedom and independence as she did, because my mom was too overprotective of me. It was at this point that my story really began. When I decided to join the Faculty of Pharmacy, Margot asked me why I chose that major, and I told her that my dad had died of a malignant disease that had no cure, so it was my dream to find a cure for it, to save lives. I studied hard and successfully enrolled in the Faculty of Pharmacy. Margot was very happy for me, and she promised to keep me focused on discovering that cure for Dad's fatal disease that I so passionately sought. I asked her to stay by my side the whole time, and she was happy to do so. The Faculty of Pharmacy was located abroad, so outside my country. I would be independent, free of Mom's smothering control. Frankly, I looked forward to it. Margot and I found a place to stay near the faculty, at a youth hostel with a group of girls from different countries. Unlike me, Margot was able to easily make friends with them. Our studies weren't easy at first, but we worked hard and muddled through. I was so excited to delve into my research and learn as much as I could. I queried instructors and doctors constantly to expand my knowledge. This was my beginning, and Margot stood by me the whole time. Eventually, we graduated from the faculty and launched our careers. I started at one pharmaceutical company, while she started at another. We were now competitors of a sort. In preparation for my private research, I rented a flat near my company. Margot did the same near hers. She was always asking me how my research was going. She knew I was trying to develop an antibiotic to cure Dad's deadly disease. It wasn't easy, though, because the body's immune system attacked the antibiotic and destroyed it before it could destroy the diseased cells. I had to discover a neutral substance that the immune system wouldn't attack. so that the drug could penetrate into the body far enough to find and destroy the disease cells via chemical interactions. My first research paper was rejected, but I kept trying, and with each attempt, I would discover something new. During that time, Margot was also busy with her work. One day, she called me. She was crying because she had been fired from her work. They accused her of stealing an important research. I told her that she was so proficient in her work that she should not be sad, but rather should try and get a job at my company. I told her that I would recommend her to my manager. She hugged me and thanked me a lot, and said, "You really are the best friend ever, Sherry." The next day, I told my manager about Margot and said that she was looking for a job and was waiting outside. He interviewed her and gave her a job. I was so happy now. She and I were working at the same company. Margot continued asking me about my research, and I gave her occasional updates. I was hesitant to tell her too much, but then again, she was my best friend after all, so I invited her to my home to tell her about my research. Margot wasn't as happy as I thought she would be to hear about my progress, but I figured that was because of her recent firing. My personal research took all my time. It was even more important than my work. One day, when I reported to work, my manager told me that they didn't need me anymore, that I was being let go, fired. I was shocked and asked why. He said that I was spending too much time at home doing my private research and too little time at work. He told me he had had several letters delivered to my home, instructing me to come back to work, and that I hadn't answered him, and that I had failed to come back to work. He told me that my roommate, Margot, had received the letters on my behalf, and had promised to deliver them to me. I was shocked. I told him that she never said anything. Returning home, I confronted Margot and asked why she didn't deliver my boss's letters to me. She acted so apologetic and said that she had received the letters, but she had been so busy that she put them aside and forgotten about them. I forgave her, but I felt that she wasn't being completely honest with me. I brushed it off and told her that being fired would simply free up my time so I could spend more time on my private research. Days later, Margot called me and asked me to come celebrate with her. When I asked her what the occasion was, she said that she had gotten a promotion and taken my place at work, my former job. I was happy for her, but at the same time, I felt that there was something wrong with these circumstances, and that feeling seemed to be growing. Time passed, and my experiments finally met with success. I had succeeded in finding the drug that could destroy the diseased cells. I was over the moon. Dad would have been so proud of me. I called Margot and told her about my discovery, and she said, "Oh, Sherry, you did it! You discovered the cure!" I told her that I planned to present my research to another pharmaceutical company soon, one that was better than my previous one, the one that had fired me. She acted happy for me, but had a strange look on her face. Then I felt sleepy, and I said goodnight. She said she would be staying up for a while, so I just went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I found my research area in shambles, and my research data was missing. I woke Margot up and told her that someone had stolen my research last night. She said that's not possible. Who else knew about your research besides you and me? And I said, maybe it was my former manager. Maybe he had somehow guessed that I had made a breakthrough. I don't know. I called the police and reported the break-in and theft of my research data, but they couldn't find any evidence as to who the culprit might be. I returned to my home country disappointed and dejected. I got another job at a company near my house. Many months had passed. I wasn't in touch with Margot anymore. We kind of lost contact somewhere along the way. Then, one day, Mom was watching TV when she suddenly saw a program that was going to discuss a new drug that would treat and cure Dad's malignant disease. They were going to interview the discoverer of the miracle cure. I sat down enthralled. I had to watch it. When the interviewer introduced the guest speaker, it was Margot. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was her. She stole my research. My so-called best friend betrayed me, and I had treated her like a sister. It cut me deep. I took legal actions against her and got my research back and received credit for finding the cure, so that was all okay. But the one thing that could never be fixed, for which there was no cure, was the former relationship between us. She had stabbed me in the back and destroyed my faith in humanity, and I don't think I could ever find a cure for that.
There are all kinds of mistakes. Some are forgiven, some are forgotten. Some are born by others, and some you pay for all the days of your life. These mistakes dog you relentless, even in your dreams. I've made mistakes in my lifetime, and I paid dearly for them. My name is Patricia. I am 19 years old, and I don't think I'm arrogant. I do think that I'm the most beautiful girl in my neighborhood. I live with my parents and twin brothers. Many boys in the neighborhood want to date me. My mom always encouraged me to think independently and to ignore other people's opinions. She told me to do whatever I wanted. Father was quite the opposite. He was always admonishing me to watch my behavior and behave myself, but I preferred my mother's advice, to be free and act on my own. My friends were like me. We were carefree and impulsive. We made bets about boys and love. We would flirt with boys and choose our victims and then cheat on them at the end to turn the tables on them. Playing frivolously with people's feelings was a bad thing, but I enjoyed it in a cruel sort of way. It thrilled and empowered me. But things changed when a guy named Jack saved my life one day. I was walking down the street alone while listening to music when a speeding car almost ran me down because I wasn't paying attention to where I was walking. Jack appeared from nowhere and pulled me out of harm's way and rescued me. He asked me if I was okay, and I said I was. He offered to drive me home, and I accepted. We didn't say a word during the drive. When we arrived home, I wrote my phone number on a piece of paper, along with a note telling him to call me in 2 hours. He did, and we talked until daylight. Jack was handsome, with brown eyes and well-tanned skin. He was a courageous man who protected me and helped me achieve all my dreams while we were together. If anyone annoyed me, I would go to him and he would embrace me in his arms to calm me. I felt safe whenever I was with him. We got engaged, had a small wedding with families and friends, and began enjoying our new life together. But my friends grew jealous of my newfound happiness, and they didn't like Jack. They thought that I deserved a better man. In the beginning, I tried to ignore their sniping at Jack, but I ended up being negatively biased towards Jack and began unintentionally sabotaging our relationship. I accused him of blocking me from achieving my dreams and of not caring about me. He promised me that after his graduation, he would find a job. I didn't believe him and asked to break off our engagement. He begged me not to and cried. But I had made my decision. I was torn between his love and my friend's jealousy and envy. I ended up losing him. Then I met Mark, a funny, blonde, rich guy with a nice car. Many girls wanted to marry him, but I pursued him and beat them all. I sensed that he didn't seem to care as deeply for me as Jack had, and that he didn't care about my safety as much either, but I dismissed my intuition. After all, he bought me anything I desired. So we decided to marry. Still, a little voice in my head kept whispering to me that I was making a big mistake by marrying Mark. After our marriage, we lived in a big villa with a swimming pool and lots of servants. But Mark changed after a while. He became irrational and paranoid. He began controlling everything in my life, even my lifestyle and my behavior. He raged a lot. Finally, I told him that I was fed up with his behavior, and that I didn't like being controlled by him like a dog on a leash. He sneered that he owned me because he gave me all his money to spend. I stopped making love to him, so he began raping me when the mood struck him. This made me miss Jack and his deep love for me. I cried a lot during our now miserable relationship. I was so distraught that I went to see a doctor with one of my friends. After checking me over, the doctor told me that I was pregnant. I was torn between joy and sadness. When I told Mark about my pregnancy and situation, he told me that we were still young and that I should abort the baby. And he threatened me, said if I didn't get an abortion, then he would do it himself. I furtively collected all my things one night and ran away to another state. I didn't know how to start over. I stayed in a motel for a while and worked in a restaurant as a waitress. I agonized a lot during my pregnancy about whether to have the baby or not. I had a kind colleague named Veronica, and I told her my story. She sympathized with me and asked me to come live with her. One day, I had a strong stomach pain in my 7th month of pregnancy, and she took me to the hospital. I was surprised to find that the birthing assistant was none other than Jack himself. We looked at each other silently for a moment. Then he asked me about my life, and I cried and asked him to help me. I saw the love in his eyes, and he told me that he would do his best to help me and the baby. Before the surgery, I held his arm and asked him to forgive me. He shushed me to be silent and confessed that he still loved me. I cried like a baby. He hugged me and made me feel warm and safe. His loving smile was the last thing I remembered before going under the anesthesia. I woke up in a room full of flowers with my Veronica smiling beside me. Jack knocked on the door and entered with a nurse in tow behind him. She was holding my baby, and they congratulated me for having a beautiful little girl. After that, he visited me every day at the hospital. I told him everything about my miserable life. He offered to let me live with him and promised to take care of me and the baby. I felt that my life was finally on the right track, and that life would forgive all my many mistakes. I even forgot my miserable past. But unfortunately, cruel life was finished with me yet. One day, I received a letter from Mark threatening me, saying that I would pay for running away from him. I immediately told Jack, and he reassured me and told me not to be afraid, that he would protect me with his life. Soon afterwards, my fears came true when the doorbell rang, and Jack opened the door to find Mark pointing a gun at him. Mark said coldly, "Do you imagine that you could take Patricia away from me? You can't." And then he laughed and pointed the gun toward me. I screamed and closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Jack standing in front of me, with blood gushing from his chest. He had told me that he would protect me with his life, and he did. I rushed over to Mark. We struggled. The gun went off, and Mark fell to the floor, dead. I'm sitting in my prison cell. I had lost everything: my life, my love, and ultimately my daughter. Life had exacted a high payment from me for making too many mistakes in my life.